Hello, you amazing, beautiful cannabis people. Welcome to another live edition of CannaSphere Live, where we talk about all kinds of things to do with the crazy cannabis industry across Africa. If you're tuning in from other parts of the African continent, welcome. And if you're tuning in from America or Europe, we've got a few people tuning in from there. Welcome, and hopefully this program will give you some insight into the happenings of things in African cannabis. The industry is growing fast. There's so much going on, it's hard to keep up. So this show brings you all the latest and sometimes not so greatest updates on what happens. But first of all, let's just talk about what we're going to go through today. Noxy is going to talk about 3 ways that cannabis can improve the life of seniors. I think that's very important, that cannabis is really for everybody. Jeff is going to talk about tissue culture. A lot of people don't know what tissue culture is, so hopefully he will give us some insight into that. Dr. Gallow is talking about the endocannabinoid system and receptors. If you don't know what those are, then you need to listen, because those are the fundamental principles of why cannabis works with our bodies. We then have Cuban, who's going to talk about commercial cultivation trends, and Brett comes up with the headlines. Linda, what are the headlines today, my brother?
Hey Trenton, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm awesome. Yeah, so the headlines today are...
You're back in the Fair Cape, yeah?
Yes, I'm back in the Fair Cape where it's nice and sunny, and there's vein everywhere. Vein.
Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, our headlines
today
are public comment on the revoked cannabis bill open up until the 11th of May 2022. So anybody that's got any insights or any comments, please send them through to them now. Gauteng says that the state land that has been made available for cannabis entrepreneurs, which is very, very interesting. And the Western Cape Police continue to do cannabis busts on cannabis farm raids. And the world's richest weed smoker buys Twitter. I wonder who that is.
Oh, lots of high-profile things happening. So without further ado, let's cross straight over to Brett in the Limpopo province for some updates on the news. Brett, over to you, my brother.
Good day from the CannaSphere news desk in Limpopo, where the sun is shining and there's a cool breeze across the mountains outside. The radically reworked Cannabis for Private Purposes bill has been opened up for public comment until 11 May. That's just over a week away. The new version of the bill includes 2 new sections and several amendments. The main changes are a section that enables the future commercial trade in cannabis, special provisions for Rastas and other religious communities, including the right to smoke communally in public, exemptions for people with medical cannabis prescriptions, an increase in the amount of plants a person may grow at home, that's up from 4 to 8, double the amount of cannabis an adult may possess in public, up to 200 grams, and a reduction in the prescribed jail time for people who grow too much cannabis at home from 15 years to 8 years. The Gauteng government has invited entrepreneurs to come forward with proposals for the province's cannabis industrialization plan. The invitation was issued in the Government Gazette last Friday and said that state land would be made available for leasing by prospective cannabis industrialists. It wants to work with the private sector, which it says has to deal with funding mechanisms, carbon reduction ideas, plans for the rehabilitation of polluted mine dumps, and the inclusion of communities as partners. In return, Gauteng says it may provide funding, leases on state-owned land, and low rentals in the special economic zones of the Vaal Triangle and West Rand. Down in the Western Cape, a 42-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of what police call running a cannabis farm network. According to Western Cape Police spokesman Zinzi Hani, the Hawks South African Narcotics Enforcement Bureau raided a cannabis cultivation farm in Boer Swartmoed in the rural area of Ceres. This was after raids on 3 other cannabis plantations in the area. Hani said the police received information that the growing network was being orchestrated by a certain individual who's been taken into custody and was due to appear in court last Friday. The police say 171 plants as well as 80 kilograms of dried cannabis were seized. Well, further north in Malawi, tobacco farmers are increasingly turning to growing cannabis with the support of their government. This report from Africa News. is the report coming in from Africa News. We can come back to that story in a moment. I'm going to move right along. The world's richest weed smoker, in fact, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has bought Twitter in a $44 billion deal, as everybody knows. But not everybody knows that this could have profound effects on the way that social media handle cannabis. The continued US federal prohibition on cannabis makes the likes of Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok extremely nervous. They often block posts, enact shadow bans, or delete entire accounts. Musk is a firm believer in legalization and has called for all cannabis prisoners in the US to be freed. But remember back in 2018, way back then, when he shocked the world by lighting up a joint on the Joe Rogan Experience. Have you got that clip for us, Linda? No? There we go. Anyway, Musk took to Twitter this weekend to say that his next target is Coca-Cola. And when he buys it, he's going to put the cocaine back into it like it had in the old days. Musk is never one to be scared of political correctness, and we're still waiting for him to get back to the Gauteng Premier and Prof. Benny de Beer of CBD Full Spectrum, who challenged him to take SA cannabis seeds into space. Back to you, Trenton.
Yeah, classic. I remember when Elon smoked that big doobie on Joe Rogan's show, and literally the share prices just completely plummeted overnight. They obviously recovered, but that was a few years ago, before the cannabis industry had really kind of gone mainstream out of America. But it just shows you that those preconceived ideas, oh, Elon's a stoner, man, sell my shares now, sell them.
Yeah. And now look at where he is now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, it's very interesting what Gauteng is doing, Trenton, and time is tight, but I think that they're going full out to go for the industrial. They're positioning themselves as the producer of industrial scale cannabis or hemp. They're going in a kind of real industrial heartland way of really trying to muscle their way in there. And it's interesting to see what's going to emerge out of their provincial cannabis. They're calling it their industrialization plan.
No, completely. And I think there's been some good moves by government in this region. So I'm very pleased to see that moving forward. I must say, though, this private purposes bill is just like another faux pas. You know, I mean, 15 years to 8 years. That's okay.
I know.
Whoopie-doo. Whoopie-doo. Thanks for that, guys. I mean, come on, you know, again, we come back to the same situation, putting people behind bars for cannabis. This is completely unacceptable, you know. And I mean, 8 plants from 4, yes, that's a little bit of a win. But I still think what I understand is that they're talking about the commercialization in the bill, but there's no actual model for how this is going to happen. So it's like, okay, guys, we're going to commercialize the industry and we're going to grow it all, but we're not going to tell you how to do it. So that
well, they don't know how to do it, because right now the whole thing is being bogged down in a fight between trade and industry, who wants to commercialize, and the Justice Department, which wants to take the narrowest view of the Constitutional Court judgment, which is just to allow cannabis to be smoked in private places and not to be traded commercially. And that's what we're hoping, that the new person in the presidency, who's going to be appointed, who's going to be appointed in the next few days, will pull those two sides together and give us something of a law that's going to make sense.
Completely. At the end of the day, it comes down to one simple fact, guys. We need cannabis in this country to make money for all of our people. So whatever it takes for that point to happen, that's what needs to happen. Brett, we'll see you a bit later. Thanks so much for that. Next up, we have Noxy with Canna Lifestyle. Over to you, Noxy.
Well, good afternoon and welcome back to the CannaSphere Lifestyle Desk with me, the Kush Queen. Now, the older we get, the more demands and care our bodies require. One estimate claims that by the year 2030, the current statistics on senior diseases will be doubled, resulting in millions of adults that will suffer from some sort of ailment. And guys, we are getting older. We're young now, but eventually we're going to be seniors one day. And with this in mind, we've rounded up 3 ways in which cannabis can improve the lives of senior citizens. At number 1, it's a natural compound. Okay, there we go. 3 ways. Thanks for that, Linda. Well, at number 1, it's a natural compound, and without messing with the chemicals that may do more harm than good, especially in a deteriorating body, Sorry, guys, I don't see my. Oh, there it is. Cannabis relies on its natural properties, treating patients with gentleness and care. The plant is multidimensional and has a variety of consumption methods affecting a wide range of diseases and effectively managing their symptoms in the least invasive way. Number 2, there's no need for seniors to get high. Even though a little high has never hurt anybody, there's no reason why seniors using prescription marijuana need to get high as well. Experts have started to develop effective prescription CBD strains that contain small amounts of THC, and these strains focus their efforts on the therapeutic side of the plant and producing little to no psychoactive effects. Number 3, it's safer than prescription drugs. While it's believed that opioids affect younger people, statistics claim that over 2.8 million American seniors, we can only imagine what's happening in Africa, have abused prescription drugs within the last year. Opioids pose a threat for seniors and increase their chances of falling, which is one of the main reasons why they end up in nursing homes. A steady and well-managed dosage of marijuana can drastically reduce these risks. I don't know about you, Trenton, but I know when I'm like 70-something, I'm definitely going to be using prescription marijuana as opposed to over-the-counter whatevers and pharmaceutical drugs. I'm already
I'm blazing till the day I die. Simple as that.
Till the day we die, guys.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting that opioids cause old people to fall over, which means that they have to get more opioids to deal with the pain of falling over? I mean, how genius is that? And the other thing that's also genius is the way that the pharmaceutical industries at the moment, especially Pfizer, name and shame, are pushing the agenda to have under 5-year-olds and between 5 and 12-year-olds vaccinated in America. But the question I have is, how many children have actually died from COVID? Firstly. Secondly, the increase in the amount of infections has gone through the roof in America with people who are vaccinated because the efficacy of the vaccine starts to decrease. So it's like, why are we trying to vaccinate all these young people who just don't need it? You know, it's completely immoral. What is the why? And it just reinforces the fact that we are literally in a war between, you know, capitalism and culture that has been accepted for many, many decades, and this new realm of possibilities to ensure that our general populace and people of this planet actually have better lives. And that's what it comes down to.
Couldn't have said it better. Sad but true.
Sad but true. Anyway, thanks for those tips. Very important. It's important to understand cannabis is for everybody. Noxy, we'll see you a bit later. Next up, we're going to Jeff, who's going to tell us about tissue culture, which is a way of propagating cannabis. Jeff, over to you, Mo.
So when it comes to actual live cultivation, a lot of companies are looking to scale more cannabis production. And this is where tissue culture or micropropagation comes in. Essentially, it's the process of actually, you know, taking the plant material, sterilizing it, and also growing it on the culture. So essentially making use of agar, which is traditionally red algae or seaweed, where you sterilize this component, you add the node sites in there, and you cultivate it. And the one benefit of this is it allows for massive consistency in terms of the kinds of plants you're going to grow out. It also makes it quite easy for you to ship cannabis around the world. So, you know, growing it in these little petri dishes, sending it around the world, whether you agree or disagree with it, it does give good consistency to the actual type of cannabis flowers that are being grown out. And then essentially they would just be replanted at the facility that's required. And this is more something we see in the commercial side of cannabis production. There's some good cannabis clone cultivators in the country of South Africa that are doing a lot of good work and have exported to multiple designations. Now, in the news, the biggest news I'd say for the week has been that President Biden has actually done, let's call it a pardon, on cannabis-related crimes, specifically to 78 individuals in the United States. One of the sentences being as high as 20 years. That's been obviously pardoned. In addition, we've seen activity that's been happening in Thailand, where a US company has set up the first, let's call it cannabis clinic within the legislative framework within Thailand, and allowing for cannatourism within this clinic space. And they expect many more foreign national companies to enter the space in Thailand. And I suppose we would hope to see similar collaborations developing in cannatourism in South Africa. Back to you, Trenton.
It almost feels like these territories, they like give us these little carrots. here, have this carrot and have that carrot, and so I'm encouraged by the fact that things are moving forward, but it just seems to be like so slow. And when I look at the American industry, and also even look at the European industry and how fast they are coming online, and these two developing powerhouse regions are capitalizing on this. And most of the developing countries are just we're sitting on our hands. We're not moving forward enough. The industry in the States has been operational for almost 20 years now, the legal industry, and it's grown, it's massive. We've seen results, we've seen how successful it can be, but we still continue in developing economies with our blundering politics to struggle to move it forward. I mean, that's incredibly frustrating. But I wanted to check with you. So for those who don't know, can you just describe the difference between tissue culture and between cloning?
Yeah, sure. So essentially cloning is obviously where you take a live cutting off a mother plant and you root that. And if it successfully roots, you've got a successful clone. Tissue culture is the ability to just scale that, I would say. So very often when you have these cloning facilities, what you do is you keep propagating those clones, specifically in the tissue culture clones. So when I use the word clone there, it's a little interchangeable, but essentially you don't rely on mothers as heavily. Whereas when obviously you're cutting clones, you rely heavily on your mother stock, whereas tissue cultures allow you to scale a lot quicker and keep, let's just call it a very safe, let's call it a reservoir of genetics.
But you're essentially extracting the sort of tissue out of the plant, out of the leaf. Does it come from the leaf or the stem, or where's it normally taken from?
Yeah, ideally you take it at a node so that it just speeds up the process. So it's a little different to what we've discussed in the past, like bioreactors, where guys grow actual cells in a bioreactor. This is kind of that little interface between cloning and something as extreme as using bioreactors for cell propagation.
Yeah, there's so many different elements to cannabis, and it gets super scientific. So Jeff, thanks for sharing that with us. We'll see you again next week. Great. So hello to Nkosi from Zambia. Seems like our African audience, our Pan-African audience are growing. Welcome to the show. We do the show every week. What I forgot to do earlier on, naughty me, I forgot to thank our sponsor for this month, the good people at Green Smoke Room Seeds, who are based in Johannesburg. They've been around for a long time. They have some amazing genetics. They've actually been around, I think, since 2009. So check them out and go and buy some seeds from them. They do great seeds. They're doing a lot of research overseas. And they're good guys. Green Smoke Room Seeds, thanks for being our sponsor for this month. And sorry for not mentioning you earlier, naughty boy, a slap on the wrist. Next up, we're going to go to Dr. Gallow, who's going to talk about the endocannabinoid system and receptors. These are the fundamentals, guys. If you've just joined the show and you're just learning about cannabis, these are things you need to know, because this is why us as humans and cannabis are like this. Over to you.
Hi guys, great to be here and happy May. So today I'm going to speak to you about the human endocannabinoid system, which we refer to as the ECS, and the science behind cannabis and why does it actually work in the human body. So firstly, every single human, we are all born with the endocannabinoid system. I like to call the system our supercomputer. It's responsible for homeostasis, which actually means balance. So what does this endocannabinoid system actually do? So what it does, it actually initiates a host of physiological and psychological changes that are needed as we ever have changing internal and external environments. So our body needs to adjust to these changing environments, and this is how it's able to initiate the host of responses. It produces a nurturing response to injuries and inflammation. It's involved in a protective mechanism against numerous cancers, neurological diseases, and nerve damage. And when we properly activate this endocannabinoid system, it's capable of suppressing numerous cancers, which we've seen in literature. And it acts like a biological regulatory mechanism that operates much like a lock and key mechanism. I'll speak about that just now, about the receptors. So we're actually born with endocannabinoids. And if you look at the word endocannabinoids, cannabis, there's a definite link. The endocannabinoids we're born with is anandamide and 2-AG, which is actually found in breast milk. That is why when a baby is born, we normally say, breastfeed the baby so we can build immunity. Now, as life goes on, guys, we have increased in toxins and our endocannabinoids decrease. And this is where the phytocannabinoids such as your CBD and THC come in. We actually need this to supplement the body. So we are actually born with cannabinoid receptors such as CB1 and CB2. Your CB1 receptors are concentrated in your brain and spinal cord, and your THC actually links directly to CB1. Your CB2 is located in the peripheral organs and immune system, and your CBN links direct. What we found with CBD, it has an indirect link to CB1 and CB2 and links to other cannabinoids such as your GPR55, which is called a G protein coupled receptor. So it's important that when you take cannabis, it's like a lock and key mechanism, and the body just unlocks the potential for healing, increasing your own endocannabinoids. And this is how the body actually works. So let's just go through quickly to conclude. The pharmaceutical drugs actually work on a single system and single receptor starts, whereas cannabis will work at this endocannabinoid system level. It's able to establish and maintain health at the nexus of homeostasis. What it does, it regulates multiple systems simultaneously, and that is why it works so wonderfully and is able to heal the body. Back to you, Trenton.
Thanks, Dr. Gallo. Appreciate that. These are the basic fundamentals that I think are really important, so we actually understand why cannabis works with our bodies. We're quite tight for time, so we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for being here. Next up, we've got Cuban Zulu, who's going to give us some insight into commercial cannabis cultivation trends. It's a massive industry. Over to you, Cuban. Like now? Or like later?
Hello, cannabis community. I'm Kwanda, aka the Cuban, coming to you live. Today, I want to discuss the trends that we are seeing increasingly in the commercial space. Firstly, there's a big focus on sustainability and efficiency, and all of the things being done geared towards that. So we're seeing a lot more hybrid grows. Hybrid grow meaning power of the sun together with lights. But this specific one I'm speaking about is the sun together with low strength LED lights, which are just enough to keep your plants in veg. So, cutting down the high costs for the actual lights, the horticulture lights, and your operating costs. Secondly, there's been obviously cutting operating costs and improving production efficiency, which is also done by a focus on crop steering. Crop steering, basically you're getting through your grow faster with controlled irrigation and controlled climate. And then moving forward, there's been more use of substrates such as cocoa peat and perlite, and together with salt-based nutrients, which is just more sustainable and more cost effective. An increase in water conservation, and finally, more and more people are upgrading to LED lights from your HPS, which has been something that has been shifting, has been happening over the past few years, but we're seeing, much more substantial shift these days.
Thanks, Kwanda. So I love the term crop steering, because essentially it's like just taking this crop and tweaking it and steering it like steering a car, yeah?
Exactly. You want to head in the right direction. There's speed bumps, there's potholes. Keep your hands on the wheel.
Yeah, that's a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
I think everyone thinks growing cannabis on a commercial level is very sexy and it's easy, but as you well know, it's complicated and has lots of different elements and factors that need to be kept in place. So thanks so much for that, man. We'll see you same time, same place. Cheers for now. That brings us to the end of our show. I just want to thank our sponsor again, since I forgot to thank them earlier. I'll thank them again. Green Smoke Room Seeds. Have you guys got any seeds from Green Smoke Room Seeds? Have you grown any from them?
No.
I haven't, but I intend to try it.
Me too.
You must try. They've been really...
Even though I suck at growing.
It says there 2009. 2009. That's a long time, huh?
Yeah.
To be in business for cannabis, especially.
What was happening in 2009? How come they were?
I think I was in high school. I was in high school.
So the guy who runs Green Smoke Room, Jordan Mercier, is a really knowledgeable guy on South African seeds, and he's been working towards building up a genetic seed bank of local land races, and made some inputs into Parliament's into the parliamentary submissions on the private purposes bill last year. So he's the real deal.
But the irony is, as far as I know, he's actually had to do a lot of his genetic development overseas because of the onerous laws here. So it's just again, let's
exactly.
take our
most
seeds,
of it's done in California.
Yeah, and because we can't propagate them here properly, I'm going to take them over to America and grow seeds that come from here, and completely ridiculous. But you do
It's
what you have to do.
embarrassing.
So yeah, it's embarrassing. But good for him for keeping the genetics alive and for just working around the system and making it work for him. That's what's important. Cool, guys. I think we've come to the end of our show. It's 25 minutes.
See you next
For
week.
those of you who have just joined us, well, you're too late because we're going now. But we are here every week on a Tuesday. We have some big news coming up in a few weeks, but I'm not going to tell you. Otherwise, I'm going to have to kill you, and I wouldn't want to do that. But please subscribe, spread the word. This is a perfect opportunity to sneak out of lunchtime and pretend you're working on your email where you've got a headphone in here and yes, I'm learning about cannabis. Thanks to all our African viewers. We seem to be really growing in the African space. So thank you for joining us. We'll be here same time, same place next week. Guys, have an awesome day. Ciao.